In order to subtract rational expressions, the first thing we will need to do is to obtain common denominators. That is true, you could make x squared minus 9 and x plus 3, all of that multiplied together, your common denominator. But the best thing to do is to fully factor each denominator and from there determine your least common denominator. So the x squared minus 9 does factor to x plus 3, x minus 3. And then the second fraction, we'll just put the x plus 3 in parentheses so they look the same. So in order to have a common denominator, we need to have both the x plus 3 and the x minus 3 in our denominator. The second fraction already has the x plus 3 in it, so we will just simply need to multiply the top and bottom by what it's missing, which is the x minus 3. Now, as you can see, both fractions have an x plus 3 and an x minus 3 in the denominator. From here, what I would suggest that you do, anytime you're adding and subtracting fractions, once you have common denominators, you're simply adding or subtracting the numerators. So I would suggest you make this into one fraction, written as such. And then simplify. And the reason for that is because of this subtraction sign right here. A lot of times students will distribute the minus through the first term in that parentheses, the x minus 3, but they will forget to do it to the second. You'll end up with the wrong sign. But if you write it this way, you generally won't forget. So it'll be 3, and then I will distribute the 2x times the x. That's a minus 2x squared. And then the 2x times the 3, that'll actually make a plus 6x because of the minus and the minus. All over x plus 3, x minus 3. Quantity step. And the last step is to see if this fraction will actually simplify. And the only way it will simplify is if the top will factor in such a way that an x plus 3 or an x minus 3 is part of the factorization. A quick thing to do to see if it even actually factors is to use the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, under the quadratic formula. B is the term that's x to the first, so in that case it's a 6. And the a is a minus 2, and the c would be a 3. Now, if this number here is a perfect square number, then that tells me that that quadratic in the numerator does indeed factor. If it doesn't, then we don't have to worry about trying to figure it out. So that's 36 plus 24. That's 60. 60 is not a perfect square number, so the numerator does not factor. So this is all we can do with this fraction, other than to rewrite it as minus 2x squared plus 6x plus 3, just to put it in standard form. In the bottom, you can just leave in factored form. And that's it, other than that we need to say that x cannot be plus or minus 3 in this fraction, because that would make the denominator 0, and we can't divide by 0. So we're done. This is the final solution.